Welcome. Gio and I are here with another special guest, Beth DeGraffenreid in Oklahoma City. And Beth, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you
Beth
for asking me.
wait, I don't have your title, Essential Offices. Tell us about you. We're going to dive right in.
I
Yeah.
founded Essential Offices in 1989,
89.
89. So we've
Wow.
been around for a long time.
Yeah.
In their
So,
second
and
generation.
the model has changed and
Yeah.
changed again, and the revenue structure has changed and changed again and changed again. So adaptability has sort of been the common thread throughout
I mean, but
my
it keeps things
career.
interesting because
It
otherwise it'd get
does.
boring. Yeah. Yeah.
This is that's one thing this has never been is boring. It's because it's always changing. You know, who we're working
Yeah.
with, what they do, everything always
Yeah.
changes all the time.
Throw a
So,
pandemic in the middle of it, keeps
right.
things spicy. Do
Uh-huh.
you do you happen to know Kelly Andrews in Huntsville, Alabama?
No, I've
Mm,
never met her. Does she go
okay.
to GWA? Would I meet her in
She
September?
said, I think she went in 1993.
Okay.
Uh, I don't know if she's been since. I was just on a call with her and she has a lease renewal coming up. We were just talking about it, but she's been doing this since 94, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So she's also a true OG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's changed a lot.
And have you been in the same, tell us about your, is one location and
I've always had multiple locations.
okay.
So, and I started in the suburbs. So, a little bit of I started out
Mhm.
in
Before the suburbs were the new black.
yes, yes. So the suburbs were new. So I was sort of leading edge in the suburbs for any business. But Oklahoma City had gone through an oil bust in the early 80s, and the central business district was dying at that time. You know, businesses were moving out, closing, banks were closing. So my dad had a building in the central business district and kind of got this idea, and I was of the what the model might be, and that he might put it in his building so that he could have his building occupied, and I would have my own business, and everybody would be happy. So I did a I
All right.
did a business plan, and I gave it to some bankers who were friends of his and said, if I was asking you for funding, would you fund this? And they said, you'll die downtown. Don't start out downtown, start out in the
Oh,
suburbs. And
interesting.
that was
Okay.
their main piece of advice. So one of them gave me a referral on one of his friends that was vacating 5,500 square feet in the suburbs. And so that was my first location. I had 12 offices with a kitchen and a reception area. No receptionist, just a reception area and me. And I was 27 years old.
I was wondering if you were in your 20s when this. That's crazy.
Yes.
That's wild.
So the one thing I had going for me was the company I worked for before was a startup company, and the founder was going back and forth to New York City all the time as part of the business. And he picked up an HQ 3-ring binder that they would give to all their new tenants. And so it became a playbook
Handed
for
it to you.
me.
Totally. I love
Yes.
it.
So, and of course, back then we did, typing services and faxing and laser printing and transcription and all these admin services. And so it had pricing, the HQ pricing for
Okay.
all of that, and for also for the space. And then I found the National Association of Secretarial Services, which I guess was a precursor to OBCAI, which then was a
No.
precursor to GWA.
Yeah, OBCAI, I think, was the
Yes.
beginning. I don't think the
So
secretarial services had anything to.
this was before, and it had like, they sent me this little book and told me how to bill back secretarial
Okay.
services and do it with space. And it was kind of the old executive suite model.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So because there wasn't really anything else to go by.
And
So those were the
you
two
didn't
things I used.
you didn't know anyone else running this like this is before the internet. This is yeah.
Yes.
But so did you have no competition in town? Were you the only
Well, we did have some building owners that had put these together mainly to get small amounts of space
okay.
leased because it was a down market,
Yeah.
and they weren't doing it. My kind of niche was to come from a professional slant. So I was the first one that did it on purpose
Yeah. Yeah, got
to
it.
do this as,
Hmm.
with intent.
Yeah.
So we have always done it with intent.
So for me, you're in such a unique market, right? Oklahoma City's like a flyover state, right? Or Oklahoma is. And so many people don't realize that Oklahoma City is actually a primary market, right? And I still remember, as you will know, when I was with Regis, we started looking at that market. It took me 2 years to get a deal done in town because it's such a good old boy market, right? And
Mhm.
so here comes this guy with a bunch of vowels in his name and long hair. And still remember Mr. Wiggins is like, I went to Harvard and I don't want to do a deal with you because I can't say your name and you're not from here. So, but it's turned out to be, I know it's one of Regis's most successful locations, but they've only got one, right? So you have
Mhm.
little to no competition in the market. You've had, Day Club, which originally started, what was Day Club's original name? I don't know.
I
I'll
wish
think
you
of it in
hadn't
a
asked
minute.
me that. Yep.
But either way, you've got very limited
Mm-hmm.
competition. It's funny because I laugh because Tulsa has more uh, flex workspace than Oklahoma City does, even though it's a
Mm-hmm.
smaller market. So you want to kind of talk about kind of how your evolution has been, how have you seen more and more demand from a enterprise perspective, or have you, right? I mean, we're seeing that in a lot of places, but Oklahoma City is such a great market to raise a family and to do business and
Mm-hmm.
everything else. So why don't you talk a little bit about your market, kind of how you found success there?
I have a couple of times taken over existing um, landlord-owned executive suites. So I did that a couple of times. People here like their space. They like physical space around them. So introducing this, what I'm calling the 2.0 market with the smaller spaces and more open space has been new. And there have been a lot of local people who have started with more open space and fewer private offices. And then there are some that are all private offices and no open space. And so I think everybody here is kind of finding their feet and finding the market and which part of the market they want to serve. For me, I've always felt like I didn't want to be too nichey, that I wanted to be everything that I could be to everyone, to be able to say yes and kind of fulfill all needs because it's a smaller market and we have fewer requests for more things instead of a lot of requests for a single thing. So I guess in the past few years, what has changed and what has changed with my rebrand and my new build out is in my old market, it was more people seeing their clients in our space and meeting with clients inside their offices, their individual offices. And so that's a bigger desk, that's a conference table inside the office, that's more space. And that was furniture that I was not providing for the individual offices. They were bringing their own furniture. So it was a whole different build out and the whole thing was built around paper. If we think about it, we were as a staff making more paper for them creating documents, copying documents. Everything was about paper. And now, in the past few years, we've been able to kind of make this turn where people need a place to work outside of their home. So it's a smaller space with greater amenity space. So that's what I have done in this past year with my rebrand and new build out.
So I think one of the misconceptions about Oklahoma, kind of like Houston, is that it's all oil and gas, right? I mean, how would you address that misconception? Some being on there on the ground.
I noticed in 2015, for the very first time, when the oil and gas market went down, my business did not lose a step. We did not lose revenue. For the very first time, those two things disconnected in 2015. And Oklahoma City has worked very hard to diversify the market. So our number one industry right now is aviation. And we have a big Boeing presence. We have Tinker Air Force Base is growing and growing, and they have vendors. The FAA is growing and growing, and they have vendors. So I am really going after enterprise clients and in a high-rise building and with the enterprise kind of build out.
Yeah, I think it's one of those interesting conversations when you talk to people because they're stuck in the past. Kind of like we still talk to landlords that are stuck in the past of, oh yeah, we only do 7 to 10 year leases, or,
Mhm.
they don't understand the flexible environment and how enterprise is using them. You're lucky that your landlord in the location you just kind of rebuilt and rebranded at is a friend and a industry colleague from the real estate perspective, right?
Mhm.
So he really understands the dynamics, the shifts there. You want to talk about kind of your rebrand there within the building and kind of how you went about it, why you decided to do that? Because I mean, you basically rebuilt your space, moved everyone, rebuilt it
Mhm.
again. So it was a complex process, but necessary.
It was. So I took the full second floor of an 18-story high rise in fall of 2010, and I moved from another location, moved my clients over, and started that second floor. And it had the larger spaces, and the meeting rooms were sprinkled throughout the space so that they would be closer to the offices and not closer to the staff. So it was a build out that really didn't work for us now. And it was going to be hard to retrofit because we were full on the second floor, and we were all private offices, very little flex space, no dedicated desk. And so I had in the idea that I would add the third floor because the third floor was vacant. And so I started talking to him about reworking the second floor and adding the third floor. And then it became clear that what we needed to do was move everyone from 2 to 3 and then add the fourth floor. So we built out 2 full floors with the build out that we needed, which was some more smaller spaces, a healthy offering of one-person offices, and the larger kitchen for events, and having all the meeting rooms near the staff where they needed to be so that we could take care of people. But we still do, have people seeing their clients in our space, but mainly they're seeing them in our meeting rooms and not in their offices. So the build out is just completely different. And then I furnished all the individual offices and did it more like what you see in the larger markets. But it's new for Oklahoma City. So we're educating the market, we're educating people on how to use the space and why it's good and why you would want to be insured. Still educating on the market itself, even now.
Did you have resistance from so you moved current members?
We moved current members, and I was
Yeah.
able to retain 85% of my second floor members on the
Okay.
third floor.
Woo.
We did, yes, that was a heavy lift.
Yeah. I mean, that's like a change management effort in addition to all the construction you're doing, right? Like
Yes,
people
yes.
don't like change. I
They
mean,
don't like change.
yeah.
And we changed contracts. So we moved everybody from a lease to a license.
Yep.
And so we had to describe how that's different. And we pulled some of the things out of the contract that were included and made them extra and explained how that was different. So here's what you had before. Here's what you're going to have now. Here's how it works. And we went around in person to each client.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of hand
It
holding.
was a lot of hand holding
Yeah.
for a period of 3 months.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm
Wow.
assuming it's always interesting to see spaces that have been open for so long. How long has your longest tenured client been there?
With us right now, 12 years. But
Right.
I've had 15 and 16-year clients before. Our average retention for private office and virtual is 36 months.
Excellent. Wow. That's a good bar to set.
Yes. So I'm really proud of that. And we really try and take care of people. We try and make sure that they're happy in whatever kind of membership they have because we want them to be with us and grow. And so a lot of my operating expenses are a little on the high side because I'm heavy on payroll comparatively.
Okay.
But I do want people to be taken care of. We still live answer some phones. People want that. We have professional people who like do appointments all day long, and so we answer phones and schedule for them. So we had to sort of rework how we did that as a staff, but it's working.
it's still somewhat of an old school market, right? That's
It
just the
is.
reality
It
of it.
is. Yes, it is. We've had a lot of people move to Oklahoma City. So since 2020, we have had 200,000 people move here. And in the 10 years before that, we had 200,000 people move here.
Wow.
So, well, they're coming from California, Colorado, and Texas, and a lot of them are coming with remote employees, and
Yep.
then also with a lot of Boeing employees
Okay.
and a lot of the aviation. And we're doing a lot of construction.
Yep.
A lot of new housing coming on, so it's just
Wow.
developing. So the metro area is now about 2 million people.
Wow.
But with all those people, a lot of people came with the knowledge of what co-working is. So they know to Google co-working.
Yeah.
But for a long time, we weren't really paying very much for that search term because nobody even knew to search for co-working.
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
When I go to GWA, I have to take, what's going on in New York and what's going on in San Francisco and what's going on in Kansas City and Dallas, and then sort of morph it to what we need.
Yeah, totally. Wait, I'm curious about your admin services. Is that something that's still fairly strong, or is that kind of
We've trimmed them down in scope, primarily because we need a more sales-oriented staff person and not such a detail-oriented admin type person. So the type of person that we need on staff has changed and their skills have changed. And so a lot of people, frankly, just don't want to do that. So we do notary. We have attorneys that do wills and trusts. And so we witness the wills and trusts for attorneys. And we do some scheduling when we live answer phones. And we allow people to have their clients drop things off with us and pick things up and that kind of thing. So we've scaled it back quite a bit.
Okay.
But I think the live answering the phones is pretty much the bulk of what's left, but it's a pretty good profit center.
Yeah. Yeah.
For us.
We had a gentleman from Intelligent Offices in Boston, and he runs a pretty robust VA service. They'll log in and do CRM work and travel planning, but he's in Boston and he, it just kind of works for him, but he has recurring packages with a minimum number of hours and that really works for them. And I always have folks who are curious about how to layer that on as a service offering. But to your point, it's the staff capacity is the hard thing to manage. So that's interesting.
It is. And the kind of person that you're wanting to hire and what their strengths are, but also what they want to do. Since COVID, we've had to pay much more attention to what people want to do when they go to work. And it used to be, okay, this is a job, just do it. But it's not like that anymore. So we're having to cater to what people want to do, but they're much happier. They're much more engaged. So I think it's a wonderful thing, but it is a shift.
Yeah.
So I got curious while we're sitting here talking as to, I looked up a list of companies based in Oklahoma City. And the top are the ones that I think are obvious to people. Chesapeake Energy, Devon Energy, OG Energy, right? So very energy heavy, but then there's some that people don't think about, right? Love's Travel Stops is based there. Sonic Drive-In, Brahms. I didn't realize Brahms was. And then a big one is Hobby Lobby, and they're in Mardel's, right? And so
and
it's just
Paycom,
right? Paycom's a big one. And then you've got a couple bigger regional banks, right? MidFirst Bank and a couple things like that. So I think it's always interesting.
And again, Tinker Air Force Base.
Yeah. So obviously you come from an entrepreneurial background with your dad and your mom and everything else. How did their entrepreneurial background kind of mold your desire to be an entrepreneur, and how did they help you kind of build that as a child and going into, a 27-year-old starting this is pretty incredible.
Well, I guess I just never thought it wouldn't be possible. I was raised by an entrepreneur and he was doing whatever he could do to keep his company going. And he took over his dad's company. So my grandfather actually came to Oklahoma in 1927 when the oil field was just getting started. and started a commercial interior contracting business on his own from scratch. So that's where those are the stories that I grew up hearing. And so I just never thought that I couldn't do it. The reason that I really wanted to is because in the 80s, the workplace for women in the 80s was very different from what it is now. And I didn't feel like I had enough say over how I was spending my time or the workplace communication and just the atmosphere at work. I wanted more control over how people spoke to me and how I spoke to other people and how much respect we gave each other as coworkers and customers and vendors. And I wasn't finding enough of that at the places that I worked.
So you're like, I'm just going to be in charge.
I'm just going to create my own atmosphere.
Okay. I
And
mean, I love, I just, the whole, like, I never thought it wasn't possible. I do think like 99% of owning a business is like up here, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of things you get, but you can learn a lot of things. You can get coaching, but it's like, you got to have that mental, drive and just belief. And I think a lot of people don't have that. So
and I just didn't quit.
Yeah.
There's that too.
Yeah, which
because
probably you got from your dad, who you
there
said
were lots
was
of
really
times when I could have
persistent.
quit, but no, I just didn't quit. I mean, that just wasn't an option because I wanted to see what was on the other side of whatever hill I was having to traverse. I wanted to see what it was like on the downhill side.
Yeah.
I want to beat it.
And what about your mom?
My mom she was very spunky. She was a stay-at-home mom. And it was funny when Dad would get home from work, they would close themselves off. We couldn't talk to them for an hour. And they would sit and have gin and tonics and
Brilliant.
Talk about Dad's day and kind of shake off the stress of his day. And then the kids could come back in the room and we would have dinner. And so she was great. She did a lot of, she was a special ed teacher. And so she did a lot of mental health type volunteer work. And she was great. She was a fun mom.
And so speaking of family, do you have a family of your own?
I do. I have a husband and 2 kids still, even after we're doing this. So they're very supportive. And, my husband does all the wall hanging. So, here we are with 27,000 square feet. And he's hung a lot of pictures. I got somebody to do the TVs this time, but if he goes around and hangs all the pictures and anything that comes with some assembly required, he's my guy.
Being a handyman is a side hustle for you.
Yeah. So he's great. And he has a flexible job. So when our kids were little, he would be the one that was at home when they got home after school and got them to soccer or basketball or whatever it was. And I was grinding away because we have to be here if somebody drops in and wants a tour, there's got to be somebody here. So, and I always just operated it, just, whatever needs to be done to keep this thing going is what I did.
When you mentioned I'm surprised that Jamie hasn't asked this, but you mentioned being payroll heavy. What does that look like, right? How many do you have on staff? Kind of what are their different roles?
I usually do 2 full-time people per 10,000 square feet, which I know a lot of people are kind of down to 1.5.
1 per 8 is kind of standard. Okay. Wow.
So
and that doesn't include you, right?
No, that doesn't include me. So my aspiration is to grow the number of locations so that I can have more on the corporate side and less on that. But right now that's where we are. So that's payroll heavy. And that puts my operating expenses closer to 25 than what I'd like.
Yeah. But so the reason
we're
behind
keeping
that
people.
Though, you're okay. And you talked about serving more of an enterprise client, which I agree kind of surprised me, with Oklahoma City, but it sounds like, and so you have maybe more of a corporate client who expects attention and someone to be at the front desk when they walk by, not one person who's back making coffee or,
right.
And then there's nobody there and a guest comes in. So your focus really is, that's your version of hospitality, is like, look, we're here for you. We're physically present. Yeah. Yep.
And again, we have counselors, retirement planners, attorneys, accountants. So their clients are coming here.
Yep.
And so really the name of the game is for us to make them look as good as possible in front of their
Yeah.
clients.
Yep.
That's always been what we do, is to further their brand, make their brand look great. And
Does-
that's the reason for that heavy payroll.
is your pricing a little bit premium to reflect that, or it might be hard?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It is. And we have several revenue streams too. So one thing that has really, since COVID, has really started to grow and become its own line item is meeting rooms.
Yeah.
So we're really pushing that too.
Was that part of your update? Did you add meeting rooms or make
Yes.
larger? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
So I actually have a 24-person training room. So I know that's a big risk.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, I like it. I
So
know. I
that's-
work with a lot of folks who are starting spaces, and I struggle with. I always talk them through like, okay, there's a lot of demand. It's a liability though if you're taking on that
Mhm.
risk and paying rent on it and not doing a rev share. And Gio will try to find one in
Mhm.
the building because he doesn't want you to pay for it. But
I know
but
nobody
you-
does. Everybody
mean-
said don't do it.
but
But
you had enough
uh,
history. Did you just like you saw the demand? You thought
we
this
had
is a-
demand for it.
Yeah.
And we're starting to get it filled, and we just opened it 3 months ago.
Okay,
So
still brand
we're-
new. Yeah.
it's still brand new, but people are using it and liking it and coming from the outside. So not our members, but people from the outside are starting
Right.
to use it and like it. And again, there's somebody there to make sure that their devices are connected to the Wi-Fi and all the wireless stuff is working, and that they have coffee and, to receive the DoorDash lunch or
Yeah.
whatever and set it up.
Yep.
And we
make
do
it a
all
really
that.
seamless, frictionless experience. Yeah.
Yes. Just to make sure there's always somebody there that they can say help. So that's
going back
that's
to
what we
the
do.
going back to the rebrand, why did you choose Essential Offices?
Well, because our old name was PC Executive Services, and that first banker that looked at it, I wanted to name it, the name of the building was Possum Creek Place. So I wanted to name it Possum Creek Executive Suites because that's the way that people did it back then. And he said, don't name your business after the building because what if you move? So I named it PC for Possum Creek, which nobody ever knew what PC meant. And then I changed suites to services because of our heavy emphasis on services. Always has been a heavy emphasis on services. But, that was cute back then, but it wasn't, it became more and more irrelevant. Nobody knew what it meant. And we didn't have a name that we could put on, the 18th hole at a golf tournament or on a table at a fundraiser and have people know what we did. So Essential Offices, I did that in 2020, found that in 2020. So the word essential was kind of, going around more.
Mhm.
And so Essential Offices it tells people what we do. And that was the biggest thing. And also I wanted to rebrand just to let people know how much of an update we did, which was 100%.
So back to the update. I mean, we kind of talked about what a lift it was, and Gio mentioned that you have a supportive landlord. But I mean, doing that kind of physical, did you have a lease renewal? Like what?
I did. I had a
Okay.
lease renewal, and I was trying to figure out what to do with that second floor and how to kind of rework it being full and how that construction would work and where would we put people. And it just became more and more onerous as to even think about.
Yeah.
So then I said, let's just do 3 and 4 and just move everybody because that seemed
Yeah.
like less work.
Yeah. Who knows when you look back on it?
Yes. And it is something completely different. The main thing that we did was put glass side lights in every exterior office. And that's what I fought for. It took 3 years, but I
With the
fought
landlord,
for
you mean?
I started before COVID, and then COVID kind of slowed everything down. And then they weren't sure what to do with me for a while. And then I just kept hammering away like, we need this, because I knew we wouldn't be able to do business without bringing the exterior light to the center of the building. We were done if we couldn't do that.
Yep. So
To me.
did you get support from the landlord on the update in terms of TI?
I did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's
I
such a
did.
heavy lift to do. I mean, you're starting from scratch, basically. So you're
Mhm.
starting over with your build out, which is so
Yes.
hard. Yeah.
Yes.
The lease renewal is tricky. So, okay.
It is.
Sounds
So
like
we
that.
did a 10-year deal. And so they're definitely going to make their money back, but it was a good deal for us on the TI.
Good.
And so we got 2 full floors. So, and now we can offer dedicated desks. Now we can offer some flex.
Yep.
Now we have that nice kitchen that we can do our events in, bring everybody together. So we had a little July 4th hot dog cookout today.
You're this actually,
So-
Kelly, the one I mentioned from Huntsville. She had also just come from, she mentioned hot dogs. They did a big, yeah.
Yeah.
Funny. Yeah.
So, and everybody likes it. It just feels different. It's not as, the paint's not as dark, the paint is lighter in color. And then all that exterior light just sort of brings it to life and makes it feel different.
And you mentioned earlier, let's kind of talk about your growth. And you said you've had other locations that have come and gone, right? I think you're down to 2 locations. You own the other building, not the one you're in now. So let's talk about first the locations that you've closed and kind of what that evolution was. You took over some existing stuff, kind of how that played out and what you learned from it, right? And then also let's talk about kind of why you decided to buy a building and, kind of what your preference, the lease you have here versus owning and kind of that strategy as well. But let's start with kind of your evolution of locations.
Well, I wanted to move to the Edmond market because that's part of where I grew up and that is a suburb that is north of Oklahoma City. And it has grown to about 100,000 people from 25,000 when I first moved there. So, and it has very good demographics as far as the average income of their residents and the average education level of the residents and just what it has to offer. So I thought it would be a great place to grow. And also their population density was growing and I was kind of watching those numbers on the demographic side. So I hired a broker and realtor and went to Edmond and they told me that if I wanted over 10,000 square feet contiguous, I was going to have to build a building. And this was in 2013. There was no office space that offered more than 10,000 square feet contiguous. So I did the largest thing that I could find that was kind of dressy enough for us. And that was a little self-contained building in an office park. And so I leased that. It was 4,700 square feet. So it wasn't very big. And that was in 2013. And then I went about building a building. So
because you believed you could.
Yes, because why not?
Yeah.
Let's build a building. So a friend of mine that worked at the accounting firm that I started out in was a banker. And so she helped me get the capital and I did half SBA and half bank loan. So the SBA, that takes a while.
Yeah.
So went to an architect and drew the building. I found the land, the contractor that built out my Union Plaza second floor space owned the property. And so he said, I'll sell you an acre of land and build you a building. So that's what we did. And it took 4 years, start to finish. From the time he said, I'll build you a building to the time we opened was 4 years. And that's it. It's 12,200 square feet.
Okay. I love it.
And it's in the northern part of Edmond. So it has a little bit of flex, but it's mainly meeting rooms and private offices.
Yeah. And it's yours.
And it's mine. And so, and that is deep in the suburbs.
Okay.
And so the little 4,700 square foot, we could, it just, you can't put every infrastructure. You can't, no, it only has one staff person.
Oh, but it does have
also,
one. I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
But you also it can't carry the overhead. There's no way it can carry the overhead that we need to represent our brand. It just, so it just became to the point where it was not representative of what we were doing in the other locations. And it was throwing people off to only look at that one. And then they wouldn't come look at the others. So I closed that in 2020 and I'm down to 2, but I'm still, looking around. I'm actively looking around for another one. So the Union Plaza is 28,000 square feet. So to me, I'm thinking of that as 2.
Yep.
And then one in Edmond and then maybe get 1 or 2 more.
Lease.
So I'm looking.
You'll lease the other 2?
I would like to do something that is more of a partnership or a rev share something, but it's kind of a square peg in a round hole here.
In that market.
Yeah, it's tough to describe the upside for the landlord.
Yeah.
And
well,
it's
and you
tough
have to have more
describe
square
this.
footage to do, to profit share. So get it.
Mhm.
Because it sounds like, do you like 12 to 15? Is that kind of your?
No, I think this one at Union Plaza, I think I'm
You like
very
the
excited
28.
about
Okay.
because it's big enough where it can actually do well and make money and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that's a better size, but it's been an incremental growth.
Yeah.
So I would say that I had another one for a while and it was like 10,000 square feet. So those were the years where I was figuring out that it's very difficult to make money at that
Yeah.
size.
Well, and your
And
first one
especially
with
with our
12
large
offices, I was like,
yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Especially with
I mean,
high hospitality, right? High
Yeah.
Yes.
touch.
yeah.
Yes.
It's tough to cover those costs if you don't have
Mhm.
enough offices, right? Especially
Right.
when the office sizes weren't super efficient, right? When they were 140 square feet versus, I was in one of Flip's spaces yesterday, and I mean, literally all of his interior 55 square foot offices are gone. I'm like, this is insane, right? And that's what's moving, right? And
$600,
who would have ever
$700
guessed?
office. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Who would have
I
ever
know.
guessed that people would office in that? But again, if you put a sliding door, all glass front, people don't have file cabinets for the most part and stuff
Yeah.
like that anymore.
Mhm.
So you can work in that size.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah,
it's
so that evolution has certainly been interesting. So
yes.
what do you do for fun, Beth, other than work and help people?
But yeah, how old are your kids? Are they?
35 and 31.
They're grown. Okay. They're grown.
They're grown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of them lives here and has a daughter that's 10. So
Okay.
we like to be with her. She's playing basketball.
Nice.
And we have a pool in the backyard and like for them to come over. So we host a lot of family dinners at our house. That's fun. And, I'm trying to travel a little bit. My mom passed away last year. And so I'm taking care of my dad this year. So, but the one silver lining about that is my sister from Washington State has been back a lot. So that we've been able to reconnect. So that's fun. So I don't know. I work a lot.
Confessions of
Yes.
Wait, but you
So-
don't have, do you have, like, in terms of the team needing you, are you more focused on kind of growth at this
Mhm.
point? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
And
kind of the
like
fun part.
training.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So hiring and training and that kind of thing. And I'm trying to grow this just a little bit bigger. So I'm pretty much out of operations now, but I'm still I with my accounting degree, I have not let go of the financial part of it. So
Oh.
I know. So mainly when I'm in the office, that's what I'm doing.
That's what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, did the kids get any entrepreneurial genes?
Maybe our son lives in Dallas and he works for a company that produces videos. So he's mainly in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And then our daughter works for Express Personnel in facilities management. So that's also
Picking up some of the, yeah.
uh-huh. Yeah. So they're both growing and learning, and that's great.
Wait, Gio, I have one more business question. I want to hear about your virtual services and how, like, percentage of revenue. You've got a nice package here. I love the way you have it laid out. I am always trying to talk operators. It's like the long standing operators totally value and they understand the revenue stream that can come from virtual. I'm running a mail challenge right now and trying to help people understand how to build revenue, and it's really fun, but it looks like, I'm guessing you do well on your virtual services.
We do. It's about 20%
Okay.
of our total revenue.
Yeah.
And I would love to grow that even more. The basic package, which is $39 just for the address.
Just for the
So
address,
we
yep.
charge per piece for the mail, and that for anybody that thinks they're not going to get mail or just needs it for a registration address.
Yep.
That works for them. On the operations side, what that does is it gets the phone call, gets the opportunity to talk to someone about a virtual office and see exactly what they need. And most of the time they're moving out of that package and into another one by the end of the phone call.
Nice. So you upsell them. Perfect.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So
Well,
then
right,
we go
and
to that
yeah.
next package app, and we use credits for the meeting rooms.
Okay.
And so we include credits in those virtual office, and then some of them have live answering. And we actually have a lot of companies on the virtual side that want the live answering.
Very nice. Okay. Gio.
So sadly, you mentioned your mom passing, and I'm sorry to hear about that. That's always hard for people. If your mom would have said there was 3 things that she loved about you, what would those 3 things have been?
Persistence, and persistent. Mother was very detail oriented, and she would follow up and follow up and follow up and follow up. And I'm like her in that way. She's very persistent, but I think that I got all of that grit from her. Just don't quit. She was not a quitter.
It's a special mix though, the like belief, but the ability to
Mhm.
follow through. Right. That can be
True, and
that
you
doesn't
have to
the good
you have to go out
personality
looking.
mix.
Yeah, you have to go out looking for knowledge. You can't, and especially in my market, there wasn't anybody. Mainly, I was telling other people how I did my business, but there wasn't anybody here that could tell me how to do this business better. So I had to go to different markets, and as a GWA has been great for being able to talk to other operators and go visit the other locations, and it's been invaluable
Yeah.
for me because for that one reason.
Are you coming to
Yeah,
Phoenix?
it's always interesting
Oh, yeah.
when
I'm already signed up
people
early
ask.
bird.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's always interesting when people ask what the value is of GWA, and I'm like, you get to go talk to industry colleagues and people that are going to be extremely open and helpful in an incredibly complex, evolving market with a whole lot more competition than there has been in the past.
Mhm.
So it's
And
always
I get to meet vendors too.
Yeah.
I mean, my main vendors I've met at GWA, so there's a lot of value there for that. So
Gio thanks you for making that comment. So does Megan.
So I met, let's see, Dale Hershowitz and Victor Vasso
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
at, so I met them in 09 and signed up with them when it was ETS in 10. So that's how long I've had that vendor, a long time. But there are other vendors there. It's just so great to talk to them specifically about their systems and how it works and what's good about it, and see demos and things like that. It's really been invaluable. And so now my husband's sister is working with me as my operations manager.
Nice.
So, and her name is Beth too. So she and I are both coming to Phoenix.
Oh, nice. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Gio, does that seg nicely into our wrap-up question?
It's all you.
Okay, if you and the other Beth were to participate in karaoke at the GWA conference, what would be your karaoke song?
I like to do the Georgia Satellites, Keep Your Hands to Yourself. Because it's sassy.
We haven't gotten that one before. Okay, great. Gio is not sure what to do with that one. Good. We'll put you on the list.
It's sassy and it's Southern.
Love it.
I would expect nothing else.
Exactly.
So I'm a little
thank you so
rebellious
much.
and a real sassy.
Yeah, that is true. And in my brief interactions with you, I agree with both. Well, really appreciate you joining us, and it was really great to hear more of your story and background. And I'm excited to get up and see the new space.
Thank you. I would love for you to come tour.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story. I always feel like at the conferences, sometimes I'm like, how did I not talk to so-and-so? Or certainly when I was back in the day when I was organizing them, never got time to like really get to know people. So this is really fun. So we'll look forward to seeing you in September.
Yes, me too. Thank you all.